Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Vasi Hyderabad from the National University of Sciences and Technology, Pakistan. The topic of my talk is pair elicitation, which is a novel software requirement elicitation technique, and the technique is inspired by pair programming. So, this is the agenda that I'll be following. I'll be talking on the goal of software engineering and then introduction to software requirements. Introduction to software requirement engineering, the standard requirement software requirement engineering process, some existing software requirement elicitation techniques, then the proposed pair elicitation, then some experiments and results, and then I would end my presentation by the conclusions and the future works. So, if we talk about the goal of software engineering, uh, basically, the goal of software engineering is to develop quality software on time and on budget that meets customers' real needs. So, this is the most important thing. If we develop a software within time and within budget, but if that is not as per the actual customer needs and requirements, that software won't be useful, that won't be considered as a high quality software, that project won't be considered as a successful software development project. So the importance of software requirements is very very high in software engineering, as you can see from the goal of software engineering. And in a software development project, there are various stakeholders who are involved, and they are from diverse backgrounds from both the sides. By both the sides, I mean that from the development side, which normally we refer to as the software producer's side, and also from the consumer side, which is basically the customers and the user side. So I'm trying to say that it's very critical and it's very tricky to deal with all different diverse stakeholders who are involved in the software engineering and specifically in the software requirement engineering activities. So basically, the role of requirements in a software development project is also as a contract. These requirements, they serve as a binding between the client and the software developer on what is to be developed for the client and for the customer and the user. So another important aspect of software requirements in the software development is that if cost of an error caught during coding is one unit, for example, that is the cost to correct that, for example, then if that error was caught during the software requirements phase, the cost would be reduced by zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2. So it means that if we work uh, actively, and if we work with by spending the efforts and energies during the requirement engineering phase, we would be basically reducing and cutting the cost. So this is basically the standard definition of a software requirement given by the IEEE standard glossary of software engineering terminology. So basically, a condition or capability that is needed by a user, or a condition or capability that must be met by the system component to satisfy a formally written document. So this is basically the definition of a software requirement. So now let's have an introduction to the software requirement engineering. Basically, it's a field of software engineering, and it comprises the process of defining, documenting, and maintaining the requirements for a software system. And as I told you, that success of a software project mainly depends on the quality of the gathered requirements. So, if the quality of the gathered requirements is high, it would be highly likely that the software would be as per the actual customer needs. So that would be a successful software project. So as I told you, that the quality of requirement is very important, and also the quality of requirement is heavily dependent on the requirement engineering process. So this is the standard requirement engineering process. which consists of two sub processes. We have a requirement development and we have a requirements management process. In the requirement development process, we have four stages, and they are: we have requirement elicitation, we have requirement analysis, we have requirement specification, and we have requirement validation. So basically, during the requirement elicitation, which is the first stage of requirement development, the requirement engineers, they basically deal with the users in order to capture the requirements proactively. And once the requirements are gathered, they then are passed through the requirement analysis, which basically is the verification phase of this requirement engineering process. And the aim of this phase is to find out if there are any errors, any issues in the gathered requirements. And we have some standard quality checks against which the gathered requirements are verified. And once the requirements are verified, they are then formally written in a formal document, which is referred to as the software requirement specification document. And the stage on which this document is prepared is normally referred to as the requirement specification stage. And once the requirement have been specified in the formally written document, they are then validated with the end user in order to check if they are as per their actual needs or not. And finally, they are baselined, and then they are obviously given to the designers for the software design. So we are focusing on the elicitation phase since the proposed approach is uh, on the elicitation. So elicitation, which is basically proactively capturing the requirements from the users, traditionally this elicitation is done by using some traditional techniques like interviewing, using a questionnaire, conducting a brainstorming workshop, reading through some of the companies or the customers' documents, using storyboards, and also there are methods like ethnomethodology and observations. We would be focusing on interviews since in this research we have proposed the approach to be used with the traditional interviewing. So traditionally, interviews one on one. There is a requirement engineer who is conducting the interview, and there is a user which is basically giving the interview to give his requirements. Normally, the interview can be open or closed. This research is basically inspired by pair programming, as can be seen from the title. So, this pair programming is basically a practice of extreme programming. And extreme programming is basically a software development lifecycle model, perhaps the first ever agile software development lifecycle model. And this model was proposed by Sir Kent Beck. And this Kent Beck is the person who was basically leading the Agile Alliance, which introduced the agile software development. This practice has proven high productivity. Basically, the approach is that not a single line of code is written by a single programmer, rather, a pair of programmers always sit together in order to write code, and one of the programmers is writing the code while the other is uh, inspecting, reviewing the code at the same time. So this basically is that we are carrying out a static analysis of the code at the same time once that code is being written. So normally the one of the programmers is junior who is writing the code, while the other is senior who is actually reviewing the code for errors. So at the same time, when one is writing the code, the other is basically finding out the errors from the code. So basically, we are reducing the cost that would be spent in testing. So basically, we would be finding out most of the errors at the same time when the code is being written. And there are some additive advantages of this approach, like knowledge sharing. Both the programmers, they are sharing their knowledge while they are going through the code writing, and also collective ownership of the code is developed because more than one programmers are working on the same code. So basically, inspired by this pair approach, we have proposed a pair elicitation approach. And currently, we are applying this pair elicitation on the interviews only. So we are proposing to conduct the interviews in pairs. So we are changing the traditional interview, and once one requirement engineer is conducting the interview, the other is reviewing the interview at the same time. So, sorry, is reviewing the requirements at the same time. So, we are proposing that there should be one senior and the one junior requirement engineer, so that the senior is reviewing the gathered requirements, and the analysis, which is the second stage in the requirement development, that is performed at the same time. And we expect that there would be knowledge sharing and there would be collective ownership of the gathered requirements. So we conducted experimentation using an educational domain software project. We used that project for validation, and that project consisted of 10 modules. We selected the first module for experimentation, and there were 39 requirements, including both functional and non-functional requirements in that module. So basically, in order to validate the technique, the experimentation was done in a way that requirements were elicited twice. And in the first iteration, the requirements elicited and then they were analyzed. While in the second iteration, we used this pair elicitation, in which the elicitation and the analysis, these were carried out side by side. So these are the results which we gathered. So in the first iteration, when interview was conducted and then the requirements were analyzed, there were 39 requirements. We use two persons, one for the elicitation while the other for analysis, and the total time spent was almost 30 minutes for the interview and 60 minutes for the analysis. So the total time was 90 minutes, and the quality of the requirement was 79%. It has been estimated by using the quality checks which are performed during analysis, like correctness, completeness, if there are contradictions or not, how many contradictions are there, how many ambiguous requirements are there, and so on. While in the second iteration, which is the pair elicitation, the number of requirements was same. We uses two resources who conducted the interview side by side. One was conducting the interview, the other was reviewing the interview. So the overall time spent was, although it was 30 minutes, but we recorded it as 60 minutes since two resources were there. The quality was 65%, which is low as compared to the traditional method, but the time has been reduced to almost 33.3% time has been reduced, as you can see from the results. So the conclusion of this work is that pair elicitation took more time, but requirement qualities was very good without even analysis. And pair elicitation can be used as pre-analysis, which would reduce the resources and would improve the quality as well. So this is the future work that we are planning to do further on this research. We are planning to have more experimentation in order to explore further the strengths and weaknesses of pair elicitation. And also, we would apply this pair approach to other elicitation techniques as well, in order to study the impacts of this pair approach on the gathered requirements through the other elicitation approaches. So this is end of this presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me. So my email address is given. If you have any queries regarding this work, you are more than welcome to ask your queries. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.